Hello and welcome back to the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com. I am Cornelius Fichtner. We are coming to you live from the 2019 Global Conference in Philadelphia. And right now with me here in the hallways, this is a first. I have three guests sitting here. We have Cynthia Dionisio, Mike Griffiths, and Steve Townsend. Hello, Cynthia.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Yeah, welcome back. Mike, also welcome back to the program.
Good to see you again.
And welcome back, Steve.
Thank you, Cornelius. Good to be here.
I've had all three of you on here before. My first question goes to you, Cynthia. You were the chair of the PMBOK Guide 4th edition, then the 6th edition. Now you're back again for the 7th edition. What fascinates you about this work?
Well, other than the fact that I'm a masochist for this,
yeah,
right?
I wasn't going to mention that.
That wasn't PC. Okay. So what do I like best about it? First of all, every time I do this, I meet amazing people from around the world. So always the first most exciting thing is the team. And this time is absolutely no different. I have people from countries and places and experiences and have done projects and programs and PMOs. They're most amazing people both on the development and the review team. There's 70 people on the review team. They're amazing. Mike and I read through all their resumes, and it was the hardest choice to pick people to be on the team. So that's always the first, most exciting thing is the team. The other thing is it's a challenge. Every single time is a challenge, and this is no different. And it's different challenges this time, as I'm sure we'll get into. But I'm like you look at what motivates people. I'm an achievement or a challenge motivated person. So it's always very challenging. So that's why I keep coming back. And I love the work.
And what are some of the biggest changes that you saw from the 4th to the 6th and now the 7th edition in terms of the project or how things are being done?
So I think the 4th brought more consistency and consolidation. And then Dave Violet had the 5th, and he did even more of that. And in the 6th, we did that as well. We added some new topics like key concepts and considerations for Agile, and that was the first time we really started talking about different ways of delivering value across the spectrum. So I think that's what was different. The 7th edition is a whole new beast, and we're really focusing not so much on the outputs like we've seen before. We're focusing more on the outcomes. So it's not about saying, hey, I did a risk register. It's more about I effectively worked with the threats and the opportunities that were there in the project and that emerged throughout the project. That's the outcome you want. You don't care about a risk register. It's a means to an end. So there's a big shift.
Yeah, and yesterday I was at the workshop that the three of you led, and when you said that we're focusing no longer on the outputs but on the outcomes, there was spontaneous applause in the audience. So people seem to like that shift.
Yeah, that's kind of about time. And I'll just, one other thing about that is I alluded in the 6th edition, we started talking about Agile, but really from the beginning, it was we have got to look at the whole value delivery spectrum. Right now, we kind of talk about linear or nonlinear, predictive, hybrid, waterfall, iterative, incremental. Who knows what's next, right? Mm-hmm. But we have to address all of it. We can't just be talking about one slice of project management. So really, the 7th edition started with that on our plate.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you are the co-chair for the 7th edition with Cyndi. What is your personal motivation to take this opportunity?
Sure. I was involved with the 4th edition, the 5th and the 6th as a content developer. And I was also engaged with the Agile Practice Guide. So for me, it's a natural progression or bringing together of those concepts in that it's more of the PMBOK Guide, but it's more of the Agile content and the non-linear life cycle. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's nice to see them finally coming together.
And what are some of the goals that you would like to achieve for the project management profession with the 7th edition?
Yeah, for the longest time, I've been trying to make more accessible for project managers a lot of the great leadership and people-oriented elements from Agile. And I think my personal goal is to get more of that into the 7th edition and into general discussion and use within the project management community.
Mm-hmm. And then, Stephen, you are the Director of Network Programs at PMI. How is the Network Programs team involved in the PMBOK Guide 7th edition?
So I actually got involved with the 6th edition when we were looking at how to build Agile content into the knowledge areas. And so I grabbed Mike and Jesse Fuel, and we worked with Cyndi and a sub-team of the PMBOK Guide 6th edition team to put content together for the 6th edition. At the same time, we were kicking off the project with the Agile Alliance to develop the Agile Practice Guide. So we were working in combination to make sure that when we were delivering the PMBOK Guide and the Agile Practice Guide together, that the two were able to, in essence, speak the same language, and there was good crosstalk between the two documents. So that's how I became involved in the 6th edition. And then out of our lessons learned from that particular project, we recognized that we needed to take a different approach with the 7th edition. We really needed to reflect the broad range of approaches that individuals could use to deliver their projects. And so we felt that we needed to start from scratch with a whole new vision for the 7th edition, recognizing that project delivery has really changed significantly over the past several years, and we haven't really reflected that adequately in the PMBOK Guide. So the 7th edition will be a radical change from what we've done in the past.
What are some of the results that you'd like to see with the 7th edition?
I think the first thing is we've developed it from a process-based perspective since its inception, really. And I think one of the things that we learned from that is that we've, in a way, created adherence to process versus really looking at how do you engage the team, the executive leadership, and other stakeholders in, as Cyndi said, driving towards the outcomes instead of the outputs. So as we've looked at and heard from our stakeholders, we hear a lot of feedback that projects still are struggling to succeed. And many of the elements where they're struggling to succeed are where the human interfaces create disconnects. So not in understanding requirements, not getting effective support or engagement from the executive sponsor, having a team who's not all on the same page. So I'm hoping that with the 7th edition, with its center around how do you create a community that can come together around a single objective and drive that outcome successfully by manipulating the project management system that you need to operate to actually deliver the result. So in shifting from a process-based focus to a human-centered focus, we're able, again, to open up people's thinking so that we're not locked into there's one way to deliver a project. I might deliver a project in a very traditional way, using all the tools, techniques, inputs, and outputs. But I might decide I have elements of my project that are unstable. So why wouldn't I use more hybrid techniques to do an element of experimentation and exploration in those areas where there's uncertainty and still being able to manage elements of it in a more traditional way. So I'm hoping that, one, we make it more human-centered, and two, we give people greater options for looking at what is the best way to deliver this specific project, the unique result, and realize the intended outcomes. Mm-hmm.
Another driver for the PMBOK Guide 7th edition is the fact that it's going to be principles-based. Mike, what exactly does that mean, principles-based? And would you have an example principle for us?
Sure. So instead of telling you what to do, or in fact how to do that, instead we're going like one level of abstraction higher, and we're talking about principles. So we've used principles of driving as an example. Regardless of what side of the road you drive on, which might be an environmental difference, we want to drive carefully. We want to make sure our car is ready for the road and we obey traffic rules and regulations. So that's a driving principle, and it's a high level. At a more practical level, what are some of the example principles we're going to have? Well, one of them is tailoring. So in other words, you need to adjust your approach to fit the environment. So, people working in different technical domains or different industries will approach things differently based on their environment. So this idea of tailoring is one of the principles. It applies to every type of project management that we do, that we have to adjust our approach and our techniques and our outputs based on those circumstances. So that's one example. There are lots of others, like another one is value, that we need to focus on the value and make sure that whatever we do, all decisions are taken in light or in focus of the value for the project. So are we adding value? Is it driving us in the right direction, etc.?
And Cyndi, how does this approach differ from previous editions, and what might that actually mean for our listeners who are project managers on the ground and they're leading projects and teams?
Well, so I don't think that anyone who's currently leading projects or teams will read the principles and go, wow, this is news to me, right? Because they're principles. A principle is like a fundamental underlying thing. So it might be more like, oh, yeah, of course. Or, oh, I recognize that I do that, or how that applies for me. So I don't think it'll be, the shift might be a little like, oh, it's different now. But I don't think any of the principles we're coming out with will be shocking or anything like that. But it is kind of challenging for the development team and the workshops that we've had. You think about, what are the very basics of what I do? And it's not like a principle isn't about what you do. It's almost like, what's the foundation? Like, where do you come from? You come from a place of how do I tailor? You come from a place of providing value. You come from a place of working with ambiguity or volatility, or you come from a place of balancing risk. Like, well, here's a threat. If it happens, it could put us behind by a week. Well, should I spend 3 weeks trying to deal with that? Of course not, right? So that's a principle's almost well, of course. Right?
And I assume that it's very hard to figure out which ones should we actually put in and which ones do we not put in.
Right. So, and it's not like principles are the only thing we're doing. Principles will be what we call the standard. And then there's the body of knowledge, which is packaged with the standard, but maybe not the ANSI standard. And so that deals with like domains, methods, and artifacts, and some other parts of it. So domains are a whole different animal from principles.
Yes.
Yeah.
As we learned yesterday.
Yes,
during those sessions. Stephen, there's actually a bigger effort going on within PMI, and that is the fact that all PMI standards are moving to be principles-based. What is the status here, and are there any of these new principle-based standards already out?
Yes. So the shift to principle-based standards began with the third edition of the Program Management Standard. And as that team was working to develop the third edition, they realized that the range of programs was so significant that you couldn't really define processes that would be applicable from a fairly simple program initiative to a complex engineering initiative, infrastructure, or development of a new weapon system or a new airplane. And so they realized we need to take a step back from the process and look at what are some of the common elements across all programs that are important for effective management. And so they set the framework that we used for the shift of the portfolio management standard in the fourth edition from a process-based standard to a principle-based standard. So that was really the first time that we made a deliberate shift to move towards a principle-based direction. Following that, we published standards for benefits realization management and for risk management that really cut across all three domains. So you can't manage risk just at the project level, because the project has implications for the program, has implications for the portfolio, and vice versa. And the same for benefits realization management. If the project does not help to set up the elements of capturing, measuring and capturing benefits realization, then the portfolio can't really determine at the end of that life cycle whether they've actually realized the value, the intended value. And so, again, realizing that we can't talk about that from a process perspective because we can't capture all the processes at the project, program, and portfolio level, we need to go to a different level of abstraction. And so the decision was made to shift to a principle-based focus in delivering those new standards as well. And as we were having the conversation around how do we best reflect the full value delivery continuum. So we have traditional project management, we have hybrid, we have agile. There are new methods and frameworks and approaches being developed now. How do we develop a PMBOK guide that's resilient to that change? And so we felt that reflecting principles and then this concept of domains, the elements of actually delivering the project that the principles help to influence and guide towards delivering the outcomes was the best approach for the PMBOK guide as well.
And in regards to the domains, I'm going to shift back to you, Cindy, because you started it. And so the previous editions of the PMBOK guide, they had domains, or rather process groups, which people often confuse with domains, and there were also the knowledge areas. So what exactly is happening here with the process groups, domains, knowledge areas? What can we expect?
So you won't see process groups or knowledge areas in the 7th edition.
Okay.
You might find them on a digital platform. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But a domain is like a area of focus. A domain or the domains in project management interact. They interrelate. They're interdependent. They're an aspect, if you will, of managing a project. So when you're managing a project, if you think about, there's this whole thing about uncertainty, right? Because projects aren't operations. So there's uncertainty from pricing volatility. There's uncertainty from ambiguity because we've never done this. There's threats. There's opportunities. All these are uncertainty. There's a whole domain of uncertainty that we focus on when we're managing projects. There's a whole domain of delivery. Do I deliver continuously? Do I deliver at the end? Do I get value way down the line? So let's look at how I should structure the, value delivery on my project. Some of that people might find aspects of scope or quality knowledge baked in there, but that wasn't where we went when we thought about it. When we thought about it, we thought, what do you need to do to deliver the benefits, the value, the objective of the project? That's where we went to when we thought about it. And so we thought about what are the project things we have to do? What are the product things that we have to do? So that's kind of, it's hard to describe a domain, but I hopefully I've given enough examples that people can start to get a feel for it.
Okay. Stephen, PMI recently published the new exam content outline, and unfortunately, people still think that the PMBOK guide is actually what the PMP exam tests you on. That's not the case. There's a separate document that clearly defines this will be on your PMP exam. The big shift there is you went from the traditional domains that we've had for years, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, closing, over to 3 domains. People, process, and the business environment. How will this change influence the 7th edition, if at all?
So for the 7th edition and for the certification exam, I think we made a deliberate choice this time to really separate those linkages so that we can be clear with our community that the PMP is a measure of project management performance from a practitioner perspective, that it's really about the individual skills and capabilities that they need to bring into the project environment to help the project be delivered successfully. On the other hand, the PMBOK guide was never intended to be the preparation book for the PMP exam. It is a guide to the project management body of knowledge. And project management body of knowledge has to encompass the individual who is helping to lead or facilitate the team. It has to encompass the team. It has to encompass the organization, because everyone in the organization is a stakeholder in one way or another. It has to cover the external environment and the stakeholders who are engaged. So it was never intended to be the preparation book for the certification exam. It was intended to be the standard for how does an organization and a group of individuals organize themselves to deliver a unique result using effective processes, tools, techniques, etc., to deliver that outcome. And so we're hoping that with the 7th edition, that it becomes clear that we're moving more back towards the PMBOK guide being the standard for the discipline of project management, but from that broader organizational context. And there will be other resources to help the individual practitioners, whether they are a project manager, whether they're a business analyst, whether they are an agilist, develop the skills and capabilities that they need to help them succeed. So it's not an either or, it's a both and, because you still need to understand the fundamentals to help you effectively deliver a project, but you need other skills and capabilities and knowledge to be effective as a project manager. So we want to make that clear that this is a key resource that you want to use, but it is not the only resource that's going to help you prepare yourself to lead in that type of environment.
Yes, the PMBOK guide has always been a reference for answers to questions on the PMP exam, but not the only reference. I believe the list is a mile long of the books that PMI actually uses here. Mike, in one of your blog posts, you wrote the following. What I can share now is that the next edition of the PMBOK guide will cover the entire delivery spectrum, and Cyndi alluded to this earlier on. It will be relevant for traditional linear life cycles and applicable to non-linear incremental life cycles, such as design thinking, lean startup, agile, Kanban. Would you please walk us through that?
Sure. What I was explaining was that the PMBOK guide needs to better reflect how organizations actually operate. And there are lots of models that are being used today in industry, from predictive sort of traditional waterfall life cycles, but I rarely see those these days. And in fact, most organizations that claim to be doing a predictive waterfall life cycle do some form of smart prototyping or proof of concept and things there anyway. But there are lots of different ways of operating. So, yeah, design thinking, lean startup, they're popular approaches. And so we want to make sure that we address them in the 7th edition of the PMBOK guide so that people using those approaches, will see relevance and useful material for them. So, I classed it as linear and non-linear, just because I didn't have a good collective name for all of the lean startup, design thinking, agile, Kanban, lean. They're all an exploratory non-linear process where we build something, we get some feedback, we learn, and based on that feedback and learning, we then decide what to do next. So what I was trying to get to there in my blog post was to explain my excitement around how finally at last we'll be embracing and covering, the full delivery life cycle.
Oh, and that excitement came through.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Cyndi, so the 6th edition is just the PMBOK guide itself, is 756 pages thick, and then there is the Agile Practice Guide on top of that, another, 100 pages or something like that. Does adding all of these additional topics mean that we're going towards 1,000 pages or even more for the 7th edition?
Oh, absolutely. Don't you know we like to charge by the page? No. We're with taking all the ITTOs out, taking out all the how-to stuff. And
Wait, come back. We're taking all the ITTOs out.
Yeah, your favorite ITTO will no longer be in the PMBOK guide. I'm sorry. Have a funeral. It's all good. All right. So no, we're taking all that stuff out. I'm thinking 250 pages, then with appendices, glossary, maybe 300. So less than half the size. Maybe we'll go back to how big it was like at the 2nd edition. That's what we're thinking.
All right. And Stephen, I also heard about the Standards Plus platform. What is the vision here, and how does this influence the 7th edition?
So let me provide consolation for all the people that just heard Cyndi say, have a funeral for the ITTOs, because there will not be a funeral for them. They are actually shifting to the digital content platform. So what we identified between the 5th edition and the 6th edition through research was a number of the inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques that we had identified in the 5th edition were no longer relevant to a lot of practitioners as we were working on the 7th edition. And so there was a significant revamping of the ITOs as part of part of the 6th edition refinement of the PMBOK guide. And what we were considering as we were developing the outline for the 7th edition was the how-to content is what is really going to change. the tools, techniques, methods, practices, frameworks are all going to continue to adapt and evolve. Technology is giving us different capabilities that we don't have today. And so since that's the content that's going to change, does it make sense to continue to publish that in a book? And can we really cover the full landscape of all of the different tools and techniques that could be brought into the project environment to help the team succeed? And we said, no, that's not realistic. But what we can do is we have a lot of good content, not only in our foundational standards, but in our practice guides and our practice standards and our extensions and in other resources and information that PMI has. So why can't we put that on a platform where we have our vetted content, so our standards content that's been vetted by subject matter experts around the world, and couple that with other information and resources so that individuals who want to understand risk at a deeper level can delve deep into that topic. So, for example, in the PMBOK guide, we mentioned the Monte Carlo analysis for risk assessment, but we don't explain how to use that tool. We don't have specific resources connected to the PMBOK guide on how do you actually take that information and apply it then to your risk assessment in an effective way? How do you communicate that information to your stakeholders? So by shifting information about Monte Carlo analysis to a digital platform, we can further build out the content. We can include videos on how do you do this. We can include podcasts where people are talking about their experience in using these different tools. Instead of waiting 3 years to publish a extension to the PMBOK guide, we can incorporate industry perspectives and perspectives on how do you do this in a small project versus a large project. So by moving the how-to content to more of a digital platform, one, it becomes a richer body of knowledge that people can access based on what they need at that particular point in time. Number two, it allows us to bring in a more diverse range of perspectives related to the different subject matter. And then thirdly, it gives people an opportunity to interact because they will be able to tell us and their peers, this is a great article on risk management. You need to take a look at this. Or there's this great video that somebody did on stakeholder management on a complex engineering program. You need to take a look at this so that we can also engage the community in sharing information that might be relevant to some of their peers. So by moving to a more interactive digital platform, we expand the body of knowledge and we make it more usable for people that are looking to build their skills and capabilities in the moment that they need those skills and capabilities.
And Mike, what will happen to the Agile Practice Guide, currently published as a separate document to the PMBOK Guide? You helped write that. What is the future here?
Sure. Well, that will continue to be out there. And in fact, recently it's been translated into 12 languages. So that will continue to be a resource for people that want to dive a little deeper into how to use Agile on their projects. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that was also based from a principle approach as well. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of good practice for what we're doing as well.
Do you see a second edition happening here?
I don't see that yet. I mean, first of all, I'm super busy with this.
Obviously,
if other people want to take it forward, I don't know what the future of that is. Now, when we did come to go out for review on it, there was a great deal of very valuable feedback that we've still got captured. So if there is ever a second, or whether it goes into some other resource, we've got some great feedback I'd love to see incorporated.
Mm-hmm. And maybe the next question is best answered by you, Stephen. Yesterday, when we were at the workshop, there were a ton of great questions that came, and there were critical questions as well. And I can already foresee that once this moves more into the public understanding of what's happening, one of the questions you're going to have from registered education providers and from future PMP candidates is, well, how am I going to be studying for the PMP exam since everything is now so disconnected from their perspective? So how would PMI envision this? What a PMP candidate would best do in order to prepare for the exam?
So I think individuals are going to do what they've continued to do. So, for example, a lot of individuals feel that they are very well versed in all of the areas of focus for the PMP certification exam, and that their real focus is on how do I practice exam questions so that I can answer in the allotted time, and how do I get experience in being able to discern the right answer in the examination. So some people just need that testing prep. How are the questions framed? How do I best answer the question? And there are resources out there that can help individuals with that. There's some individuals that need a little more depth in a particular area. And so we're anticipating that our chapters, that our registered education providers, and other learning partners are going to adapt their training programs to be able to accommodate that. So, for example, now that the exam includes questions related to hybrid delivery and agile delivery, there's the Agile Practice Guide, and there are other resources that people can tap. Many of the exam resources that are available for studying for the PMI ACP, Agile Certified Practitioner certification, would also be relevant resources. So there's still all of the resources that are currently available will still be applicable, including the PMBOK guide. So the PMBOK guide going forward will still be relevant for the key terminology associated with project management, because again, we want to make sure everybody's speaking the same language. And again, the elements of what is required for effective project management won't change. So you still have to understand how to manage the team and the human dynamics. You have to understand stakeholders. You have to understand risk and uncertainty and complexity. You have to understand how to measure project performance and measure how you're moving towards the outcomes associated with the project. So the 7th edition will remain relevant for individuals who are preparing for the exam. The content will just be at a different level. But again, they will also have the Standards Plus digital platform that they can go to. So if I really need to understand what a Monte Carlo analysis is, I can go to the Standards Plus site and I can delve as deeply into that content as I need to. So I don't think that the world is going to change as significantly as people feel it will, but I think that individuals are going to have to do an assessment of how do my skills link with the current certification exam content outline? Where do I need to build my skills, and what's the best way for me to do that? Is it through live learning? Is it through practice examinations? Is it through a study group with peers who are going to be preparing for the exam as well? And that's what individuals should actually be doing now. So I don't think the world is going to be that different once we shift not only the certification exam next year, but also once we have the new PMBOK guide in the market.
Let's move on to the closing, because we're slightly over half an hour, and so we can just skip yesterday's workshop, if that's all right. Okay. To close our interview, let's look forward to the day when you are holding the PMBOK Guide 7th edition first printing in your hands. Mike, tell me, what are you holding in your hands, and what will it help project managers do?
Sure. I'm holding the shiny new 7th edition of this guide that will help me as a project manager understand how to navigate projects and be successful. By reading the principles, I'll know where I should be focusing my time and attention, so I'm successful with the outcomes of the project.
And Stephen, what are you holding, and how does it help PMI advance?
So I'm holding the new body of knowledge, which is reflective of the full value delivery continuum. So from traditional project management to hybrid to agile to whatever comes next. And this helps PMI advance its objective because it ensures that we remain relevant for the profession. And while I'm holding the PMBOK guide, I'm also looking at a screen that has the Standards Plus digital content, because I know that I'm not going to get all of the detailed information I need on how to do what's in the PMBOK guide, but I'm going to be able to go to the Standards Plus site, and I'm going to be able to get that rich body of content that's going to help me more effectively apply what I read in the PMBOK guide in actual practice.
And then, Cyndi, you will obviously be holding the 3rd PMBOK guide, where you were either chair or co-chair. So where will it take our profession?
I think as project managers work with this, they're going to have to elevate their thinking from tell me what to do, and we're going to have to start to apply critical thinking to say, here's options. I need to be responsible for determining the best way to deliver value for this project. So I think we're going to see more critical thinking. I think we're going to see it be useful, fundamental concepts for anybody working on a project, whether it's at a very high level product owner, business owner, sponsor, maybe to a team member hitting it the first time. And I think it's going to shift the approach from I filled out X to I have a roadmap to deliver value. So that's what I think.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time this morning. We
Thank you.
all appreciate it.
Thank you, Cornelius.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity.